Today on the LA Food Podcast, a historic episode because we've done one-part episodes, we've done two parts, we've even had a few guests bless us with the side part, but never have we done a three-parter. Until today, that is. Today's headliner, to borrow a term from our friends at Coachella, is none other than Michael Voltaggio, the bad boy of molecular gastronomy, who you might know from winning Top Chef Season 6, from cooking his ass off on shows like Triple Threat and Tournament of Champions, or from helming some of the most influential LA kitchens of the last 20 years, including Jose Andres' The Bazaar, and of course, Inc. However you know him, Michael's here for what can only be described as a rambunctious conversation. We look back at his career, discuss the pivotal role the 2010s played in putting LA fine dining on the map, and why, after all of the success he's achieved in his career, he can't stop, won't stop pushing the envelope. But before we get there, two parts, because that's how three-parter episodes work. A couple episodes ago, I teased an exciting event coming to downtown LA this October, LA Chef Con, happening at Redbird and Vibiana. Today we're joined by its organizer and friend of the pod, Brad Metzger, to break down what it is, why he's putting it on, and not just why you should care, why you should go. And first, as I like to do whenever I get a blessed week without Father Saul, I want to share a couple of things that caught my eye in the food world this week, including 11 Madison Park's Big Pivot, Rivers' Bill Addison review, and the impact Ozempic is having on restaurant menus. It's gonna be a doozy, but first, a quick reminder that the LA Food Podcast is part of the Acquired Taste Media Network family. Be sure to check out our sister pod, Taqueando with Bill Esparza. Bill spoke with Mexican music legend Pepe Aguilar this week. That's available wherever podcasts are found. Be sure to leave Taqueando, as well as this podcast, a review or rating wherever you listen. Seriously, it's super appreciated. Who am I? Well, I'm your host, Lucas Servodio, and without further ado, it's time to chow down. The LA Food Podcast is presented by The Lonely Oyster. Unwind at The Lonely Oyster's Echo Park Night Watch. Did you know that every night is industry night at The Lonely Oyster, dear listener? Stroll in after 10 p.m. nightly for a one-of-a-kind experience designed for the night owls and hospitality pros. Indulge in $12 handshake cocktails, expertly crafted liquid chef concoctions, delicious late-night hot bites, and chef's choice dozen oysters. More than just a place to unwind, The Lonely Oyster warmly welcomes industry professionals, providing a space where like-minded individuals can connect, relax, and enjoy the camaraderie that comes with the late-night scene. Whether you're looking to kick back after a long shift or simply enjoy the vibrant atmosphere, late night at The Lonely Oyster is the perfect rendezvous for those who appreciate good company and great food and drinks. Don't miss this nightly affair and let the good times roll at The Lonely Oyster. Dear listener, happy Friday. Things are finally starting to cool off in Los Angeles. And before we dive into my middle school teacher attempting to play John Oliver coded monologue today, allow me to regale you with a couple of excellent recent eats I've had since you and I last spoke, or since Father Saul and I last spoke at least. First up, our friend Nancy from Compliments to the Chef, the Top Chef recap pod we partnered with for our Let It Rip Bear Companion pod. She was in town for one night and one night only from New York City, and Father Saul and I only had one opportunity to show her that Los Angeles is a better dining city than the Big Apple. So we put our heads together and we decided to take her to Budinoki in Virgil Village. That is a restaurant that I have waxed lyrical about in the past. It's probably one of my favorite openings of the last 18 months, and Father Saul hadn't been yet either, but as you know from listening to this pod, he trusts my opinions blindly. So we took her to Budinoki and it did not disappoint. I think it's even better than what I remembered. The standout dishes were definitely the seasonal scallop crudo, which this time came with a little mango. The pork sausage, the nem, really hit with the crispy rice balls that you break in half and then you stick the sausage inside with a little bit of their crispy slaw. Really, really good. But the new entry for me on the menu, in terms of one thing I'll definitely be ordering next time, was the nigima, the chicken oyster skewer, which is zhuzhed up with a bit of galangal, which I typically associate with Thai flavors. So really cool little fusion-y mix there. And I think fusion sometimes gets lobbied at Budenoki as like an insult. That's really, really stupid. I feel like just because a restaurant is blending together the flavors of different cultures doesn't necessarily mean they're doing something gimmicky. If anything, it's a branding problem. The service is always spectacular when you go to Budenoki. Our server was truly legendary in terms of banter. He regaled us with tales of an ex-lover he had recently broken up with. It was very relatable, but also hilarious. Definitely a bit of a gambit. You got to be able to read the room in order to share that kind of information with customers, but we were definitely the customers to share that with. Warm service, not too high touch. Everybody knows their shit, and they really go above and beyond to make you feel at home. So service and food, Budenoki, fantastic. Secondly, I went to La Cita in Chinatown, the Filipino restaurant, for the first time in a really long time. Actually, the first time since it was Lhasa back in the day. And now it's sort of more of this sort of like elevated Filipino rotisserie, and it is absolutely fantastic. Like, the vibe in that plaza is like weirdly, I don't know, like European. Maybe it's because we went like around like sunset, but I felt like I was like in Barcelona or something, about to, indulge in some tapas. And yes, I did say tapas in an obnoxious way on purpose. I've spent plenty of time at Kuya Lord over the last year. I love Spoon and Pork over in Silver Lake as well, but La Cita is definitely a slightly different proposition. It's a little more refined. It's definitely like that wine bar meets Filipino food vibe, which the other two are definitely not. Their wine selection, by the way, is fantastic. I want to say that they were like naturals that we were drinking, and their funkiness paired really nicely with like the bold flavors in the cuisine. My favorite dish was probably the pancit, which is the Filipino noodle dish. They brighten it up with some calamansi. A lot of the pancits that I've had in the past are pretty one note. They're almost just like stir-fried noodles, which are primarily salty in their flavor profile. That sort of like fruity acidity that the calamansi added to this dish was lights out. Also, we ordered the lechon pork belly, and it comes with these like 5 sauces. I love when dishes, especially proteins, come with a selection of sauces that you basically get to curate every single bite as you go along. There was this one sauce, I didn't catch its name, but it was the one that's sort of like whitish, right? It almost looks like applesauce, but what it eats like, the garlic sauce at Zanku? Imagine that if it was coconutty and a little fruity, right? Doesn't sound like it should work, but it really, really works. That with a little bit of their chicken, oh my God, you're good to go. Also, shout out to Chase, dude I met there who stopped me in my tracks because of the soccer jersey I was wearing. We could have talked the entire night about soccer jerseys. My wife was joking in the car ride home that I had actually found my soulmate that night. I think she might be onto something. Finally, shout out to Teddy's Red Tacos. I hadn't been to Teddy's Red Tacos in a really long time, probably since 2022. And I went for the first time in a while this week because Bill Esparza was interviewing Mexican Grammy winner Pepe Aguilar, and we needed a spot to do it. And Teddy's was nice enough to host us. And as we were sitting there, Teddy, being the very hospitable gentleman that he is, he wasn't going to let us go hungry, so he brought some consomme to the table, and oh my God, those flavors are on point. I know that there are other cool BDS spots, other cool TJ style BDS spots in the city, but what Teddy is doing remains fantastic. And his backstory, if you don't know it, is fascinating. I think the dude got like heartbroken, and so he went to Tijuana to sort of like find himself. And what he ended up finding was a sick birria recipe, which he brought back to LA. It's a really cool story, a success story too. I mean, the dude has like 7 stores around town. I think he was featured in a Super Bowl commercial at one point. So I wasn't expecting heartbreak to be a theme of this podcast, but sometimes major difficulty leads to great things. Who knew? Well, I hope I've gotten you sufficiently hungry with that quick roundup of recent eats, and now on to some stories that caught my eye this week. Funny thing, as I was pulling headlines for the pod, I realized every single one had the same through line. Restaurants finding ways to reinvent themselves to survive in these absolutely brutal times. Instead of just rattling off articles like I usually do, I thought I'd zoom out a little bit and share a few big picture observations from my very comfortable seat in the ivory tower. Now, if you've listened to this podcast enough, you'll be aware of the fact that I spend way too many of my evenings consuming reality television. Think Housewives, Love Island, and of course, the Bachelor and Bachelorette franchises. That was probably my gateway drug to reality TV, if I'm being honest. Well, on The Bachelor, one of the ways in which the protagonists talk about weeding out the true love interests from the men and women who are simply looking to boost their Instagram followings is by asking themselves the questions, are they here for the right reasons? Are they here for the right reasons? It's pretty much a meme at this point. Simple enough, right? It's asking, is Becca F genuinely here to fall in love? Is the adoring look in her eyes one I can trust, or is she just looking to lock down a HelloFresh brand deal? As I was reading these articles, it struck me that in an environment when restaurants are being forced to adapt due to all of the reasons we've discussed ad nauseum, from inflation to strikes to ICE raids, there's a wide range of tactics being employed in terms of how restaurants are doing so in terms of pivoting, right? And yes, in an ideal world, diners would be empathetic enough to recognize this and make the extra effort to support restaurants making adjustments no matter what those adjustments look like, whether it's higher prices or menu changes. The truth is, though, diners are having a tough time themselves. Many folks are tightening their belts, and when they go out to eat, they want to put their precious dollars towards places that make them feel good. I'm starting to believe that, kind of like how dogs can smell fear, diners can smell and are turned off by desperation. Reading the news this week, my half-baked but totally impenetrable theory is that there are 3 types of ways this goes down. First, there's the naked reaction to the issue at hand. This is the equivalent of a restaurant changing for the quote-unquote wrong reasons, to steal a phrase from The Bachelorette, aka panic, right? Exhibit A is an article on Ozempic-sized menus as covered by Allison Kruger in the New York Times. The piece essentially states that nearly 1 in 10 Americans are now on appetite suppressant. The piece essentially states that with nearly 1 in 10 Americans now on appetite-suppressing drugs, restaurants are rolling out mini martinis, 3-bite burgers, and snack boards designed for people who eat less but still want to go out. Owners say it's just like adding vegan or gluten-free options, which is about meeting guests where they are. But underneath that is a bigger question. If appetites are shrinking, how do you keep the check average from shrinking too? At first when I read this, I thought, well, fuck. Strikes, fires, impending recession, and now GLP-1s? That wasn't on my bingo card of how restaurants were going to get screwed in 2025. And look, you gotta applaud the restaurants in the piece who are doing their damnedest to still get people in the door. But I don't know, man. If I'm going to a restaurant and I see a section of the menu titled Manjaro Friendly, you best believe I'm going to be a little put off. Why? Because it smells like desperation. You might say you're doing it because you want to meet the diners where they're at, but to me, it's like the contestant on The Bachelorette looking you earnestly in the eyes while secretly planning which C-list celebrity they're going to DM given their newly minted 15 minutes of fame. It doesn't feel like the change is happening for the quote-unquote right reasons. Next up on the right reason spectrum, though, we find legendary chef Daniel Humm of 11 Madison Park. You may recall, dear listener, that 4 years ago, he turned his 3 Michelin star restaurant, 11 Madison Park, into the world's most famous vegan tasting menu. At the time, it was a climate-conscious statement that drew plenty of praise and plenty of skepticism. But what do you know? Booking slowed, wine sales cratered, and the labor required to keep the menu innovative when all you have to work with was plants was unsustainable. Turns out that selling your office on a corporate account at an elevated native foods is a hard sell. Shocker. Humm announced earlier this week that come this fall, meat and seafood are coming back as optional add-ons to the menu. The restaurant will stay plant-led, Humm told the New York Times' Kim Severson, but it's clear that the move is part hospitality and part survival. Proof that even in fine dining's rarefied air, you still gotta give the people what they want. This is a tough one for me on the right reasons scale. If you've read Will Guidara's Unreasonable Hospitality, you know that EMP is famous for switching things up, led by the ethos of creating the most hospitable experience for their guests. That said, you can kind of feel while you're reading this that the last thing Humm wants to do is add the lavender honey duck back to the menu. While I believe he's all about hospitality, because of the massive deal he made about EMP going vegan, it's kind of hard to believe that he's not calling his meat suppliers through gritted teeth, if you know what I mean. Will this be successful in bringing people back to the restaurant? Sure, there will be some former regulars and some corporate lunches that come back for business, but are people going to be flocking there like they used to during the Obama years? I think no. So to me, this is the equivalent of a bachelorette contestant who's a total sweetheart. There's no reason to dislike them, but you kind of question the entire time whether they're genuinely into the bachelorette. Like, all his ex-girlfriends are a completely different type. They're from opposite ends of the country, so you know it would never work out in the real world. Maybe the bachelorette has a kid, and this guy is clearly not ready for fatherhood. He's not a bad guy, but he's just not her guy. Similarly, while EMP may be genuinely doing this for the quote-unquote right reasons, and given how thoughtful they are, I truly believe that, it just doesn't feel authentic to who they are today. And I fear diners are going to feel that. In fact, my prediction is that while the meat is currently being positioned as an add-on, come this time next year, they're going to go full Brazilian steakhouse, full churrascaria. Which brings us to the final category, a restaurant pivoting for the quote-unquote right reasons. As I mentioned in the intro, Bill Addison dropped a review of River, Travis Lett's izakaya, which he insists we pronounce River despite my natural proclivity to call it Rover, Raver, and anything but River. First of all, it's always nice to get a Bill review. We've been a little starved of them as he was working on his list of the 101 best restaurants in California. I love that I always learn new words when I read Bill's reviews. This time the word of choice was quaffable, which apparently means easy and enjoyable to drink. Bill used it to describe the clam broth in one of River's ramen dishes. But the backdrop of Bill's review has to do with how River is a revival of Travis Lett's old izakaya, Mountain. And this time, it's better. Bill likes that the aloof hipster energy has been replaced with warmer service and sharper operations, and he waxes lyrical on how the restaurant has leaned even harder into what Travis Lett has always been known for, i.e. cooking vegetables well. In fact, Bill makes the bold statement, the city's most inspired plant-centered cooking is happening here. The review leads us to view River as a reboot done right, keeping the bones, fixing the flaws, and giving people a reason to care again. The underpinning of this is the fact that Lett has gone out on his own and is no longer accountable to his partners from the Jelena days. It smacks of a chef who took some time away, really asked himself what it is he wants to do, and stood on business 10 toes down, as Amaya from Love Island would say. Not that I'm trying to mix reality show metaphors. And as a result, the restaurant is a huge success. Stellar Bill Addison review, you can't scalp a table, and all of your annoying West Side friends keep using it as an excuse not to visit you because they have something good on their side of town for once. It is the Bachelorette contestant pivoting for the quote-unquote right reasons. This is the sweetheart construction worker from Alabama who doesn't even have an Instagram and is so genuinely enamored with the Bachelorette you can't help but ship the couple. Now don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean there aren't economic reasons behind Lett's reimagination of Mountain. Let's not forget that the restaurant that replaced Mountain, Valle, failed in the exact same location. But the point is, the economic reasons behind the changes aren't front and center. They're undetectable to the human eye. What leads the way is the food, the design, and a chef who feels like he's finally doing what the fuck he wants. Finally, of course, sometimes there's no way to pivot. That brings us to Glendora Continental, a 45-year-old Basque restaurant and community hub now up for sale. It's a place built by an immigrant family, kept alive for decades through literally sheer will, but as the generation that created it ages out and the next moves on to not wanting to own a restaurant anymore, the owners have decided it's time to close. Reporter Gene Trin of the Los Angeles Times wrote a beautiful piece that memorializes not just the restaurant, but the whole cultural world of like Basque immigrant restaurants. This piece to me was a reminder that sometimes, as hard as it is, the right move isn't to reboot or pivot, it's to say goodbye. It's the Bachelorette contestant who knows off the jump the Bachelorette isn't for him and spends a couple of episodes broing out with the dudes in the villa before sending himself home and wishing the Bachelorette nothing but the best. It's fucking sad, and we've lost way too many institutions this year, for sure. But sometimes it's what's best for everybody involved. I will say the way Gene wrote this story, fucking beautiful. It's just excellent food writing. The ideal way to memorialize a restaurant and what it meant to a community. I definitely recommend reading it. So that's it. 4 restaurants, 4 paths: reinvent, resize, reframe, or close the book with grace. Different strategies, same reality. How do you survive in a business that never stops changing? The good news is that it is possible to do it well. Just make sure that whatever you do, you're doing it for the right reasons. That'll do for today. Coming up after the break, our interview with Brad Metzger. Dear listener, I made a deal with my wife. She let me start a food podcast and eat ungodly amounts of noodles, pizza, sandwiches, and more under 2 conditions. One is that I never utter her name. The other is that I find ways to be healthy outside of my work in food. Being the fantastic partner I am, I found a few ways to up my health game. I exercise almost every day, I try to sneak in salads for lunch whenever I can, and I only ever snack on healthy foods. The macadamia nut has become an essential part of my daily routine with the best omega-6 to 3 ratios in the nut game, 8 times better than pistachios and 20 times better than cashews. At houseofmacadamias.com, they've got a bunch of different macadamia products that you can enjoy, like savory and sweet snack packs and chocolate-covered snack bars. One of the problems with macadamias I've found is that they can be expensive, but I'm solving this for you, dear listener, because as of today, all you've got to do is head to houseofmacadamias.com and use code LAFOOD to get a 10% discount on a healthy snack that also happens to be delicious. So what are you waiting for? Head to www.houseofmacadamias.com/discount/LAFood and go nuts. Dear listener, it's my pleasure to welcome back my good friend, the president of Brad Metzger Restaurant Solution, Brad Metzger himself. Brad, how you doing today?
Awesome, man. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I got a quick icebreaker question for you. If you can only go to one LA restaurant for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
You've asked that question to people, and I think it's important to take it seriously and understand you'd be eating a lot of meals there, right?
Yeah, it's got to be a breakfast, lunch, dinner type deal.
Exactly. I'm thinking Justa because I love smoked fish. They have all these different options,
Hmm.
and I don't know if they have Mexican. I love Mexican. I love sushi, but if I really had to do it, it might be that restaurant. Or Superba Food and Bread.
Nice. Yeah, they've got some chilaquiles there. They've got a breakfast burrito, so you could get a little bit of that Mexican flair there too.
Yeah.
Good choice. I was just there for brunch on Sunday, and I gotta say, it definitely hit. Hey, Brad, just because last time you came on the show to plug Chef's Love LA, the amazing event you threw back in what was it, February, March? Oh my
Yeah,
God!
February. Yeah.
Wow, time flies. People were asking, what is Brad Metzger Restaurant Solutions?
We are a hospitality recruiting firm. We've been in business about 23 years. So we help restaurants find amazing management talent, front and back of the house, chefs, sous chefs, pastry chefs, GMs, directors of ops. We work with the Curtis Stone and the Rustic Canyon Group and Lowry's and the Peninsula. And we work with them to find them great talent, yeah, for their operations.
So, dear listener, and we've spoken about how difficult it is to find labor and good people in this industry. So, Brad is doing the work to get those qualified people in the restaurants you love. Now, you're here today to talk about LA Chef Con, which we've mentioned on this podcast is coming to Redbird and Bibiana this October. Let me start here. How did LA Chef Con start? Because this isn't the first one.
No, we started in 2018. And what happened was I was at the farmer's market on Main Street in Santa Monica, and I was looking at the program that came out in the print edition of the LA Times for the LA Times Food Bowl.
Mm,
And I think this is the first year that they were doing it. And I was blown away by all these amazing events they were doing all over the city. But as I looked at it, I saw that there was no dedicated event just for industry people, for the industry, for workers and restaurants and chefs.
yeah.
So I was like, okay, we don't have that in LA. We do not have a conference dedicated to our industry here in Los Angeles. So I texted my friend Amy Scattergood, who was with the LA Times at that point, literally sitting at the farmer's market, having my chai tea and reading the paper. And I presented it to her. And she's like, oh my God, that would be an amazing idea. Why don't you do it, put it together, and we'll make it part of Food Bowl. And LA Chef Con was born. We needed a location. I reached out to Sherry Yard, who I think you might be talking to soon,
Oh yeah.
who was at iPic movie theaters.
Hmm.
So I said, Sherry, we need a spot to do the first ever LA Chef Con. How about a movie theater? You know, there's sound, there's great seating. She's like, Brad, absolutely done. Let's do it here at iPic in Westwood. And that's what happened.
Wow. And now you've had how many iterations of this?
We've had a bunch of it's been since 2018, but of course we've taken a few years off with the pandemic. So we've had a couple years off here and there, but you know, we've been going since 18.
Wow, congratulations. Well, you're bringing it back this year, the year of our Lord 2025. Obviously, we've all heard about the tough time that restaurants are having this year. Why did this year feel like the year to bring it back?
Well, we did it in 2013, 23, and we did take a year off last year, but it was very, very important to bring it back because this is such a hard time for restaurants. I mean, not only is this a very hard time in this country for restaurants, LA very well might be the hardest city in the entire country for restaurants right now, right?
Hmm.
You look at these amazing chefs, amazing operations that are closing, AOC, Casilla.
Yeah.
You know, these are not to mention the legacy restaurants, right? Like Cole's and other ones. So I felt it was extremely important to do this because it's an event unlike anything else on the West Coast. It brings together the industry
Yeah.
in a way that gives them amazing topics to discuss, very important industry topics to discuss, also entertaining panels, fun entertaining panels. Like we have a Jonathan Gold tribute panel,
Hmm.
but we also have very important topics that are relevant to right now, such as we're doing a panel called Industry in Crisis. Where do we go from here? And we have CRA President Jot Condi. We have Tracy Park, who's a LA City Councilwoman, on that panel, along with
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Boehm from the IRC. And we have, these very important industry related topics, as well as the fun topics and just incredible food. And it also gives everyone an opportunity to come together and network and see each other because a lot of these chefs, they're always doing events, but they're working
Yeah.
and they're hustling and they're coming and they're going. They're not part of the event. This is by the industry, for the industry, to come together and enjoy and see each other and talk about important things and eat amazing food.
Yeah, we've got a conversation with Michael Voltaggio coming up next, and one thing I asked him was, seems pretty rare because restaurants, I imagine, are so siloed within their own individual restaurants, right? It's not like there's not a ton of intermingling unless you're going to visit other
Exactly.
restaurants afterwards. How rare is it to bring everybody together like this?
I don't think there's any other occasion that does this. I
Yeah,
really don't. And also, you asked how it came about. I have to give major props to the team at Viviana and Redbird because Chef Neil and Steven from Sprout, these guys know what we do, and they felt it was important to have it as well. And they opened their doors and their arms, and we have an incredible person over there, Britt Sills, who's helping us execute this. And it's not easy. We have literally 118 speakers and chefs that are cooking.
yeah.
Those are just the people that are coming to participate and be part of the event, not to mention the attendees. So there's a ton of moving parts. It's a lot to coordinate, and we wouldn't be able to do it if they didn't approach us and say, hey, let's host LA Chef Con here at Viviana and Redbird. So super thankful of them.
Shout out Redbird. Hey, you've kind of alluded to some of the elements of the day, but walk me through it. Let's say I'm a young, enterprising restaurateur going for the first time. What can I expect?
Well, we go from 9 a.m. till 10 p.m.
Wow.
Okay. We have breakfast. We have 12 different panels across 3 theaters. We have a 2 hour chef driven lunch with 20 chefs, including 5 pastry chefs featuring guittared chocolate.
Hmm.
We have a cocktail party with things like the Caviar Lagoon by Michael Mina, The guests,
Wow.
the attendees will be using fishing rods with magnets at the end to fish treats, caviar treats, furnished by Imperia Caviar out of a smoking lagoon. All right.
Yeah,
We have Sean
that's crazy.
Brock at that cocktail party. We doing a dish. We have the Pizza Alliance guys. David Turkel is bringing some of his pizza guys. All right. So that's a 2 hour cocktail party. And then at 7 o'clock, we march 2 blocks to the Grand Central Market where we're going to have the after party with Chef Wes Avila as the DJ.
Wow.
Everyone who comes over will get $20 in Grand Central Market bucks so we can support all of those vendors on a slow Monday night over there.
It's amazing.
Plus collab dishes, complimentary dishes with Gilberto Cetina. We have him pairing up with Broad Street Oyster. We have Tristan, the chef de cuisine from Providence, pairing up with Lucky Bird.
Hmm.
We have Evil Cooks pairing up with Maple Block. And we have complimentary beer and wine as well for the after party. So all in all, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Sounds like I'm gonna need to take some, or drink some Celsius in order to just get through the entire day. Sounds absolutely amazing. So it's really cool that it's sort of like not just educational, it's also like for enjoyment. You know, I feel like it's also like let's have some fun. Obviously times are a little bit dark right now, so getting everybody together to celebrate I feel like is just as important. You know, if I'm you know, someone in the industry who maybe is a little on the fence, what do you think is the value of actually coming to this event?
I mean, you're learning. You're learning from incredible speakers like Alice Waters talking about the Green Michelin Star. We have David Gelb, Nancy Silverton, Jordan Kahn, Michael Voltaggio, Jonathan Waxman, Drew Nieperin is coming from New York. We have book signings by Roy Choi, and plenty of others. So I think that there's an opportunity to learn from some of the industry's greatest professionals and also taste amazing food and be inspired and meet new friends in the industry but also see old friends in the industry.
What I love about it too is the way you've put together the program is you come at it from so many different angles. Like for example, you know, full disclosure, dear listener, I am moderating a panel, and the one I'm moderating is with a bunch of really venerated journalists here in Los Angeles, and we're sort of going to be talking about likes and loyalties and sort of like how journalists approach covering restaurants in Los Angeles. So that's another angle that people can learn from is, you know, get inside the mind of these journalists that you're always reading and thinking about, hey, how the hell do I get on those lists?
Exactly. That's likes, listen, loyalty, building a restaurant brand in today's social economy with moderator Luca Servodio, with Matthew Kang, Brant Cox from Infatuation, Joy Limonon, and Hillary Eaton Werner. And again, that's just one of 12 panels that are all, just top notch, incredible speakers and experts in their field.
Yeah, but be honest, that's going to be your favorite panel.
I'm really looking for the Jonathan Gold tribute with Roy, Nancy Silverton, Ludo, Evan Kleiman, and Lori Ochoa. That one I cannot wait.
Yeah, me too. Actually, I think that's going to be the sort of like bring down the house panel.
Yeah, that's epic. I've been dreaming about doing that one for years, and I pitched it to Lori, and she was excited about it, and so was Evan and Nancy, and we added Ludo and Roy Choi. It's tough to get those people together. Trust me, very tough.
You know, we've obviously talked about the value to folks in the industry, but a lot of people listening to this aren't in the industry. They just love the industry. They love restaurants. They're welcome too, though, right?
They are. We have we're doing a ticket lottery. All the information is on the website www.lachefconference.com. So absolutely anyone can join, and we'll be doing that lottery. I believe it's posted, but I think it's September 18th is when we're going to issue those tickets.
Awesome. Anything else you want to share with us about the day, Brad?
I don't think so. I really appreciate the platform. Love what you do, Luca. I'm an avid listener, and honored to be here, and just very excited about this year. I think it's our best program since 2018, and yeah, I can't wait.
I'm honored to be a part of it. Thank you so much for inviting me, and honestly, for dear listener, you're the guests you're going to be hearing on the podcast in the next few weeks are happening because Brad introduced us. So, for example, Michael Voltaggio will be speaking with Nancy Silverton, we'll be speaking with Sherry Yard, and of course, Jordan Kahn. So, thank you, Brad.
Absolutely.
Final question for you. What's your favorite LA food podcast?
Um,
I put him on the spot. I put him on the spot on purpose.
no comment. I'm an avid podcast listener.
Yes, he is.
I love Andrew Talks to Chefs. I love Matt Rodbard's podcast, The Taste. I listen to yours every week. I listen to Air Jordan every week.
Oof.
So
It's all in good fun, my friend. Brad, always a pleasure to speak with you, my man.
thank you.
Well, I kind of can't believe it, but we are joined today on the LA Food Podcast by the legendary Michael Voltaggio. Chef, I got an icebreaker question for you. You can cook for any musician, dead or alive. Who do you cook for, and what are you making for them?
It's funny. I just was asked that question recently, and I'm really satisfied with the answer. And to say stay consistent, I'll say John Batiste is somebody that, because how I sort of look at the way that I cook as taking things of the past, classical things, iconic classical things, and repurposing them in my own way without disrespecting where they came from. And if you listen to some of his current music, he's taken so many great works from classic pianists and just kind of put his little touch on it in a way that like brought that music, not that it was never not current today, but like made it his own. And so, I mean, just to me, he's a musical genius. And I think anytime you get an opportunity to be around somebody like that, for me, I would just be beyond starstruck to be able to do that. What would I cook for him? I would probably ask him to write the menu himself and give me the list of dishes that he would want, but then let me interpret those dishes my own way, the way that he's managed to do with so much music. And I just think that would be an incredible experience for both of us.
So he would like write down Philly cheesesteak or whatever, and then you would run with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It feels like something you've done before.
Yeah, it has. And just there's this calming aspect about his music where anytime I'm sort of going through it, which I feel like a lot of us are going through it these days, just putting his music on, whether it's background and I'm not tuned into it 100%, or I'm quiet sitting in a room and I am tuned into it 100%. It has this ability to sort of just make me feel present.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Everybody needs different music for different situations, and finding an artist who has that effect on you is so key. I'm not sure I have one, honestly. I gotta check them out.
It's emotional. It really is.
Well, we were introduced by our mutual friend Brad Metzger in light of the upcoming LA Chef Con coming to Redbird and Vibiana on Monday, October 6th. Let me start here. I imagine in a line of work where everyone is siloed among their different restaurants, getting together as an industry is pretty rare. How valuable is it for you as a chef to get to an event where you can rub shoulders with your peers?
I mean, I think it's necessary because one, it gives us all a chance to just check in on each other. I think as an industry as a whole, the hospitality industry, I mean, I've said this before too. It's like it's our job not only to take care of our guests, but take care of each other. And I think just getting us all in the same room gives you that opportunity to potentially reconnect with someone that you haven't talked to in a while, but also to be able to share those conversations in an honest way. I think the way Brad has set this whole thing up, it's really just an open dialogue about the climate of where our industry is, but also I think an opportunity for people to ask for help and for people to give help. And I think that that's, to me, what I hope to take away from this experience is just that. If I can share a little piece of myself and make somebody's day a little bit easier, a little bit better, but also selfishly grab some of those, bits of information from people that I've grown up my entire career respecting and admiring, to now be able to call some of these people friends, it's just an honor for me. Like, I think that we all get caught up in believing our own bullshit sometimes, that we think that we're bigger or better or different or unique. And I think we are in some cases, but I just feel like we're stronger as a body versus its individual parts. And I think it's important for us to just keep building that body.
Yeah. Not to get too deep, not even 5 minutes into this conversation, but do you feel like chefs, more so than other people perhaps, have a harder time asking for help?
Yeah, because we're the ones that we're always required to do the work. Yeah. It's like the reservations are made, the dining room was designed and all that stuff. Once all that's done, it's the people serving the food and the people making the food that are delivering on that experience. And there's a saying like, no matter what happens throughout the day of prep, the doors are going to open at 6 p.m. every day. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to be ready for that. And I think, we've all been in those scenarios where it's 6:15 and those tickets start coming in and you're still prepping and trying to set up for service. No one's going to bail you out of that. And I think we have this sort of innate, I don't want to call it a desire, but responsibility to make it happen. And so I think it's just always been easy to default to like the chef will take care of it. And I think that I have these conversations a lot lately because I have so many different projects that I'm working on at the same time, and I can't seem to get past this waking up at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning with this anxiety in my fingers and my veins and my whole body, where I feel like I'm missing something, I forgot something, I owe somebody something, I need to take care of something, and not to mention like balancing my family too. I mean, I have 3 daughters and a wife that I also have the same responsibilities to. And so I just say yes. I say yes to everything and I procrastinate. And then when it's tomorrow, kind of like this podcast, I woke up this morning, clicked on the calendar. I'm like, I was just on a phone call with somebody about a food festival. And I was like, I got to go. My calendar, I got a podcast like right now. And then, I'm jumping into having lunch with Jet today, which I'm excited about. And then, we're shifting gears into this dinner that we're cooking at the Benjamin this weekend to raise money, and support a chef friend of mine who's dealing with some personal stuff as well.
That's Jet Tila, dear listener, by the way, in case you weren't familiar with who Jet is. Well, it's kind of apropos you bring that up, Chef, because you're going to be speaking on a panel at LA Chef Con with Jonathan Waxman, Bricia Lopez, among others, on balancing life as a celebrity chef with running the operations of the various restaurants you own. And you just mentioned all the things you have on your plate. You got multiple restaurants. You're always on my television. You've recently embarked on a new journey with your brand Mercado 28 with tequila. Not to mention, as you said, you're a father and a husband. What's the deal? Are you just chronically afraid of boredom or what?
I just feel like it's my calling to satisfy everyone around me and to take care of them. And I can't lose sight of the hospitality aspect of what I signed up for. And I know it doesn't look like it, but I'm constantly putting everyone else in front of myself. And I think that's just how I'm designed. And I think, I don't want to be like, I'm so misunderstood, but yeah, the optics could be like, wow, man, this guy's really killing it. But at the end of the day, like I'm constantly stressed out because not only do I do all of these things, but I want to make sure that I do them well and that I fulfill all my obligations and that I make other people happy with my work or in my personal life. And I don't know. It gets overwhelming. I mean, I have to be really, really honest about the fact that like, do I feel pressure every single day? Absolutely. But I think that pressure is what drives me to continue to keep going forward. And did I answer that question? I don't know. I'm in this part of my life right now where I'm just going to be completely honest and cut through all the fucking bullshit and just tell you how I feel.
Honestly, that's the beauty of podcasting. It's like, I feel like for a lot of people, it does end up being like a therapy session. And I'm always like there for it. You know what I mean? Because I feel like so many interviews, like they just like want you to talk about the most recent thing you've done for like 5 seconds or 5 minutes. And when I speak to a lot of chefs, especially like people who aren't quote unquote celebrity chefs, this is the first time they sit down and have a fucking conversation, and get to reflect on their lives. And I got to know, like, you're feeling that pressure, right? How do you deal with it? Like, what do you do? Do you meditate a ton or what?
I think what I'm doing recently, and it's helping me a lot, is trying to figure out just how to be grateful. And I think that, as I look at my life and my career and the trajectory that has gotten me from this, 16-year-old kid who I was moved out of my house at 16. I was in high school paying my own rent in an apartment, cooking and working 48 plus hours a week, going to school and navigating through all of that, not knowing that was setting me up for the rest of my career. Fast forward to today. I mean, I moved to LA with very little money in my pocket. I managed to come here and build this career for myself, and it doesn't stop. You have to keep the machine going. And I don't think I think because somebody once told me that I'm incapable of being satisfied. And I think that's a heavy thing to say to somebody, but it's also a heavy thing to hear because you start to realize, like, is there something wrong with me? Like, is that normal? And I just think that what I've defaulted to now is gratitude. I think that I'm very grateful and very lucky for all the things that I've gotten to do. Yes, it took a lot of hard work, but everybody works hard. I mean, that's
Yeah.
not everybody, but most people work hard, I think, or at least I'd like to think they try to. And for me, again, it's just being grateful, like waking up and realizing like, wow, I get to do this versus I have to do this.
Yeah, no, and I think it really comes across. I obviously I listened to a lot of podcasts and conversations you've been on in preparation for this, and that whole ethos of gratitude and humility really comes across. I gotta say, it also is a little at odds with how you've been painted, I think, in the past a little bit. Sort of this like abrasive, like bad boy of cooking.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that sort of like perception versus reality?
I mean, we're talking about a career of 30 years now. I started
Yeah.
cooking when I was 15 years old. I'm turning 40, bleep this out, 47 this year. And I, we grow up, you know what I mean? I'm not the same person I was back then. I'm not the same person I was when I was on Top Chef. I'm not the same person I was when I was opening my first restaurant, Inc. Uh, they're all stepping stones or building blocks or opportunities to learn. And I think it's not just about learning about food or learning about restaurants or learning about hospitality. It's about learning how to become an adult and how to then you shift from what am I doing today and what are they saying about me today to what is my legacy going to be and what am I going to be remembered for? And I think a lot of times without podcasting and these conversations, there weren't really a lot of opportunities to sort of introduce who you are to people. And I think that as much as, you know, even the media is struggling right now, I think we all have a responsibility to support the efforts of the media so that one, our stories are accurately being told, but two, there's an opportunity to continue to still tell our stories. And I think,
Yeah.
you know, do I feel misunderstood in a lot of ways? Yeah, but also there's a lot of truth behind what's been said about me. And those truths, I look for consistencies. And if I start to think or believe what's being said about me, then I know that's an opportunity for me to fix that part about myself. And I think that I really take that to heart. I've had really horrible shit said about me, and I've had really incredible stuff said about me, and I've had, you know, mixed things said about me. I don't know what to really believe, but I know that I can learn and grow from it. And I think now I'm at a point in my life where that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And that's what I need to do because I am thinking about legacy is such a big word. And what does that mean? It doesn't mean my legacy to the entire world because I don't think that I have access to that, but it's the legacy to my family and friends and those that are around me that I really am staying up at night thinking about.
You know, you mentioned that you came to LA with nothing in your pocket. You know, you came to build something. If I'm not mistaken, LA has been your home since 2008, 2009, when you moved down here to open the bazaar.
17 years ago this month.
Wow.
Like pretty much like right now. I celebrated my 30th birthday, which was September 29th, cooking a dinner with Wolfgang Puck, Jose Andres. I remember Sherry Yard made me a birthday cake and Robin Leach was there and they all sang happy birthday to me. And I was like, wow, LA is amazing. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to really make it out here now. And, you know, that was just my intro to that part of Los Angeles that, you know, a lot of people perceive this city to sort of be like there's celebrities and there's all this fancy stuff and that's all here. But when you're moving somewhere and you're quite young and you don't know what you're getting yourself into, you then have to afford the right and the ability to stay there in that environment. And so that's where I also felt that pressure immediately to like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm in LA, I'm working for Jose Andres. This restaurant's super important. I have a massive responsibility to take care of this right now. And I think that drove me through. And then I just accepted that job at the time as that's my sole responsibility. And then everything else just was built on top of that. And I think ultimately, I mean, I'm still trying to figure out who I want to be when I grow up. And it's like, it just went so fast, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I go back and do some things over? I mean, would I? Absolutely. I think there's a lot of things that I would change and do differently, but I wouldn't know that if I hadn't gone through it.
100%. Well, you know, you mentioned Jose Andres, like looking back on your career, it seems like you always sort of seem to follow where the inspiration was, where the opportunity was. I mean, you moved to, NorCal after you're working in Miami, right, to go work for Charlie Palmer, I believe. Then you came down here, right? Was it just the opportunity with Jose Andres that brought you to LA, or was there something else about LA that sort of attracted you as a destination?
Originally, it was just Jose. My dream at that time was to work for him. When I got to have that opportunity, I didn't realize how important that was going to be and how much that was going to change how I looked and thought about everything that I was going to do. And I think that, when you're dealing with somebody or working for somebody like Jose, who, he has dreams at night. And then when he wakes up the next morning, he immediately brings his dreams to life. And I just saw that as a source of inspiration for me, because I thought, like, okay, if he can think that up and we can all rally together and make it happen, then anything's possible. So all you need to have is a really good idea or a desire to do something, and you can actually do it. And yes, I learned a lot about modern cooking, and I was exposed to a lot of really cool stuff. But the one thing that I took away from my experience with Jose was that anything is possible if you can think of it. And the only reason we can't do something is we didn't think of it. And so
Yeah.
that really changed my life, because I was very much in that tunnel vision of like, oh, all I care about are these 18 dishes that I have to have ready for the menu. And all I want to do is like win all these awards. And all I want to do is, and I know this contradicts everything about my career today, but like at the time, I thought these accolades were what was going to make me relevant. And what I didn't realize was that those experiences were what was making me relevant, if I'm even relevant at all. And I think that when I sit down and get a chance to really tell people all the different experiences that I've had in my career, a lot of times people are like, wow, I didn't know that part about you. And my answer is like, we didn't really ask about that part. You were focused on like holding me accountable for today, but not really fully understanding the steps and the hurdles and the hills I had to climb to get here. And I'm still climbing to get there, wherever there is. And I won't stop until
Yeah.
I physically can. And I just, again, but I still have that gratitude. It's like I get to be here. Wow, today I get to do this podcast. I mean, how many millions of people or whatever you could have thought of to like to want to have a conversation with, and here we are, we're two strangers talking to each other, and we're having a flowing conversation as if we've known each other for 20 years. And I think that that's just such a cool thing.
Yeah, it is really special. Honestly, the what you're describing to me reminds me almost of like when you go to a sauna, and it's like super hot and challenging while you're in there, but then you get out and you feel fucking amazing. And it's kind of like what you just described is you just had like you had so many hurdles. You described like having to move out at 16. I've heard the stories about you grinding it out, not just at the Holiday Inn, but at the meat factory. What was that like? Some crazy experiences.
Yeah, when I had my first child right when I was turning 21 years old, and I was working at the Greenbrier Hotel in West Virginia. And we would get the winters off. And my first winter prior to having a child, I was going to New York and working in New York City for the winters, and then going back and doing my apprenticeship in the spring and summer seasons and into the fall. But then after having realized that I'm having a child, I couldn't afford to go to New York anymore, and so I would stay in West Virginia, and I would go to the hotel butcher's house where he had a walk-in fridge on his property, and people would go out and shoot deer, as one does in West Virginia, and they would drive him to his house, and I would stand in his refrigerator in the wintertime in the side of a mountain for extra cash to save up, but processing these deer. But it was cool because I got to learn whole animal butchery really quickly, but also it was another need to survive. Like a lot of the earlier parts of my career, starting with being on my own at such a young age and paying my own rent and all that kind of stuff, and then wanting to get a car and having to live, and then having a child, like all these reasons for taking all this extra work was because I genuinely needed the money.
Yeah.
But then those experiences ended up being far more important than the paychecks that I was getting. But paychecks were just affording me the right to be there. And so, or giving me the ability to be there and survive. And so, it's all been pretty hard, but I think every step has prepared me for the next. And I think if you look at whatever you do for a living, if you look at it with that mentality, like if I do this, it could help me to get to that, then that, as opposed to just going straight for the destination. Like take all the detours and pick up all the things you can on the way, so that when you do get to that destination, you're like, oh, this is cool. It's kind of like when you go on vacation. Like I got there, saw the Eiffel Tower, like, all right, what do you guys want to do now? And that's kind of like how I look at my life. It's like, I mean, I didn't get on an airplane until I was 16 years old. I didn't take trips like that. I never traveled. And now I've been to, gosh, probably almost like 30 countries or something. And it's been this business, this industry
Damn.
that has given me those opportunities. I mean, cooking has taken me all over the world. And I'm now at a point where, like, you know, LA Chef Con, like, why talk about all this stuff, or how do you balance all this out, and blah, blah, blah. Again, it goes back to that gratitude. Like, without everyone involved, I wouldn't have gotten to do any of it.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I'd be sitting here right now.
It's all very Slumdog Millionaire. You know what I mean? Have you seen that movie where it's like,
Of course.
yeah, every, like the venison, you're like, probably at the time, you're like, why the fuck am I in this cold ass freezer butchering meat in the middle of winter? And then later on, you probably, that butchery experience served you in ways you didn't even expect. And like the ability to look back and recognize that, it's like enlightenment, bro.
We used to eat, the meal that we ate was, he would have a pot of beans and some cornbread, and we would use the deer carcasses as a table and sit outside basically in the freezing cold and just eat hot beans out of a coffee mug and eat cornbread. And the table was like whatever pile of deer was sitting there at the time. And that was just like, it wasn't luxurious and glamorous. But it was motivating because I was working in these luxury environments, and I had never been exposed or experienced any of these type of environments until I was working in them. And then immediately your brain shifts to like, maybe one day I'll get to be a customer here. Mm-hmm. Maybe one day I'll get to experience this from the other side and sit at that table and like but it's just, and I've gotten to do that. And it's like, it's pretty incredible that again, this industry has just always been here for me, no matter what.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool way to look at it. Back to the bazaar, you know, some people who are listening to us maybe didn't live in LA back in like 2009, 2010, or they were, you know, too young to remember it. All our Gen Z kings and queens out there. People might not remember just how impactful the bazaar was in terms of like shaping LA's culinary landscape. How would you say, like, what is the bazaar's legacy in LA?
I feel like it happened at the time that it needed to happen. I think that there was a lot of really exciting stuff happening here. John and Vinny were doing their thing. Roy Choi was, you know, sort of stepping into the Kogi empire, and like not even empire at the time. He was, you know, selling tacos out of a food truck because he wanted to change his narrative a little bit. And I think that it was the most exciting time, I think, for this city as an opportunity. Like a lot of great restaurants opened during that time. But I remember growing up on the East Coast, hearing about like Ludo long before I ever got to move to LA. And then fast forward to today, I get to be friends with him. Like I knew about his days at L'Orangerie when I was working at the Ritz-Carlton in Naples, Florida in like 2002, because the pastry chef at that hotel had worked with Ludo at L'Orangerie, and he kept telling me about this guy in Los Angeles. And then I did my research, and like the fact that like I can text or call Ludo right now is pretty fucking cool. And I'm just like, Bazaar, I wouldn't say that the Bazaar was responsible for everything that happened during that time, but I feel like the Bazaar was a part of what was happening at that time. And that was LA, like, be blowing up at the time. You know, a lot of chefs were coming here. And I think that, you know, you look at like David Chang. I mean, he was probably one of the first people to start like turning up the music, taking the tablecloths off, and implementing fine dining basically in a more laid back environment. And I think that LA just took that mentality and ran with it and was like, okay, this is how our city's going to do fine dining or finer dining or elevated dining or whatever you want to call it. And I just think Bazaar was just something that was just like, it was just this explosion of all of that. I mean, it was cool. It was it was modern. It challenged your senses, but there was also comfort food. And I remember Jose saying like, yes, we're doing all this cool modern stuff, but like the traditional Spanish tapas, like that's the important stuff, the flavor, the essence of what Spanish cuisine is all about. We have to represent that. And I think that we did that in a way that hadn't really been done before. And again, it started with, you know, whatever dream he had, and then to like take food that he was doing, even at Minibar in DC for 12 people a night, and to serve that kind of food for upwards of 400 or 500 people was an impressive ambition, but he made it happen and we made it happen,
Yeah.
and it happened. And I think that, John and Vinny were the first people that I met when I moved out here, and just even those guys back then, with everything they had going on, they were so gracious to like give me their time and their resources and help me find my way in this city. And I still like, I can call on them to this day and ask them questions about stuff if I'm having challenges and stuff, and vice versa.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what you just said about the explosion that the Bazaar wrought, I mean, the same can be said of your project that you opened after Top Chef Inc., which, alongside restaurants at the time, like, of course, you mentioned Animal, but also Red Medicine, Spice Table downtown. It was sort of that really, like, I think that sort of coming of age of LA in terms of that, like, tableclothless fine dining that you were alluding to. I feel like LA really became like sort of a pioneer nationally for that style of fine dining that now is sort of like the gold standard across the country. I mean, and obviously I'm biased because I'm the LA Food Podcast. Of course, I'm going to think LA's the shit. But do you agree with that? And do you think that, like, what is it about LA that made it the perfect place to sort of be that breeding ground for this next phase of fine dining?
I mean, I think one thing that we don't really talk about is, like, yes, that was a really cool sort of time, and that style of dining has become super relevant. But also, I think some of it had to do with the fact that we had to navigate through very challenging economics and trying to figure out how to do business in this city in a way that was sustainable. And I think that a lot of that happened. I don't know if it was intentionally or not intentionally, but I think that it needed to happen in order for us to actually have all these great restaurants. Because the cost to do business in this state is not cheap. And I think, you look for creative ways to find solutions. And I thought that was a creative way forward for a lot of reasons, but also this city is very transient. And so back then, every couple years, you had to go back out and capture your audience again, because people move into LA and they move out of LA, and they move in and they move out. And just relying on the fact that you're an institution, I don't think was ever going to be sustainable for anyone. And I think that you had to go out and get everyone's attention and be disruptive. And I think that was a disruptive time.
Well, look, speaking of disruption, getting people's attention, Inc. really did that. When it opened, it was like, look over here, everybody nationally, this is what we're doing, this is what we're about. And it was turning heads. What really struck me while I was, researching for this podcast, though, is how deeply you took some of the negative reception. Like, for example, like the review from Irene at the LA Times, right?
Yeah.
What was it about that cut deep for you?
It was confusing for me at that time, because I got this review and I thought we were doing great. And I read this review, and it felt a little bit more like it was personal and less about the actual experience in the restaurant. I don't remember the words correctly, but it was like, Voltaggio stands there like a barker as the women line up in drones to come meet him and take pictures, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was odd at the time to even mention that stuff, because it wasn't true. It was an open kitchen, so everyone that walked in the door could see me there working, and they found their way to the pass. And it was like any other restaurant. I mean, if the chef is right there, you're going to go say hello. And so to have that part be pointed out was a little disheartening, because if you look at that same year, we won GQ Best New Restaurant, and I won Food and Wine Best New Chef. And so I didn't know what to really I couldn't figure out what to believe.
Yeah.
But I do remember reading between the lines of Irene's review and emailing her and saying thank you to her, and saying, like, there are a lot of truths in this, and I'm going to do my best to course correct. And I hope that, like, I can make this experience, what it's expected to be. And I found that was probably the first moment in my career where I really started to become who I am today. And that's, like, okay, don't react so fast. Don't just default to getting angry about something. Like, try and understand what it is that's being criticized about you, and then see if you can fix that part, or if you agree with it and want to fix that part. And I thought that her giving me that review after giving us 4 stars for the Bazaar was a real humbling experience for me. Yeah. And it made me feel again, grateful that she took the time to come and write that review, so that I want people to be honest with me. You know, it's kind of like you go to a table and you ask people like, how was everything tonight? Oh, chef, it was great. And
Yeah.
then you walk away and they're like, oof, yeah, but that dish was so salty, or that was too spicy, or that was unbalanced.
Yeah.
Like, we need those truths,
Yeah.
because how do we get better?
I think it's really cool to hear you say that because, being on the other side as someone who does not cook, but who criticizes a lot. And I try to come at it from an uplifting angle like 99% of the time, right? It's really fucking hard to say something negative to someone has like poured their heart and soul into something. And it's like, you don't want to do it. You know what I mean? And I feel like a lot of times people who are in the position of being writers don't do it because they're afraid to give that feedback. So hearing you say that is, I think, like, important. But the thing is, like, not everybody is able to take it as graciously as that, right?
Yeah, I mean, every experience is something to learn from, and I just felt like that was just a confusing year. You know, it took me it was emotionally and physically taxing, but also it was amazing because I
Yeah.
was this like exciting restaurant in Los Angeles. Like, mind you, this is only a short time after, I moved here. It was probably what, 6 or 7 years after
Yeah.
I moved to LA that I was opening that restaurant. And so again, it goes back to like I came here with not much of anything and was able to build a path for myself that led me to owning and operating my own restaurant in the very same city that I was intimidated and had never been to until I moved here.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't come to Los Angeles until I physically moved here.
Yeah.
And that was wild to me,
That is
and
crazy.
to then, I didn't, I was just happy to be at the table. And I think that that's, a lot like for LA Chef Con. It's like, I don't know what that day is all about, but the fact that Brad finally reached out to me and asked me to participate was such a huge moment for me, because I felt every time I get those calls, like I'm like, oh, okay, this person thought about me, and
Yeah.
that's incredible. So now I have a responsibility to ensure that they thought about me for the right reasons,
Yeah.
and so then again that pressure builds on, and then I start thinking about like, okay, I gotta make sure that I can, whatever they're asking me to do, I gotta give them my best parts of myself to make sure that I can accomplish and give them what I'm being asked to provide. And I just, for Brad to call me and ask me to participate in this was an honor, because you look at the roster and it's like, oh, a lot of these people were my heroes before I ever knew them, and now they're my friends. Again, I'll go back to the Ludo story. It's like there's so many people on that roster that I can't believe I have a seat at the same table, and I'm just so grateful for that.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of other chefs that you've had an impact on, like, it strikes me that at any restaurant, but at Inc. specifically too, there have been a lot of like seeds that you planted across the city. Obviously, like Mei Lin, right? Like she opened Nightshade to great success. Daybird is still killing it. 88 Club is making a lot of noise, not just with May, but with chefs that have worked with you or for you in the past. What is it like for you to see all those sort of like trees starting to blossom across the city and across the country?
I mean, I feel like some people would be intimidated by that, right? And other people, those people being me, celebrate that. I think I knew May was going to be a superstar the day I met her. She walked in the kitchen. She like just was a tyrant. I mean, she was no nonsense, no bullshit. Like, she threw down. She was within days the best cook in the kitchen, and she just, it was very easy for her to show everyone, to get everyone to respect her, because she just did it with her movements. I mean, she just cooked like a machine in our kitchen. And to see what she's doing today, I'm like, of course that's what was going to happen for her, because she put the time and the work and the energy into doing that. I mean, she worked for a lot of other people too, like Wolfgang Puck, and just, I mean, her list is impressive as well. But to plant those seeds, I don't know. I mean, they made the move to come work with us, and so
Mm-hmm.
they were sort of planting their own seeds. All I did was water them a little bit, and I think that I can't take credit for any of it. Again, it's like you put your seed in the soil that you want to grow in, and my job is to just pour a little water on it from time to time to see if I can help. But I'm only going to be a small part of their story. I'm not their story; they're their story, and just like all the people that I've worked for, like I, they were part of me getting to write my own story, and I'm grateful for those people. But I I went to go get those jobs. I made the sacrifices. I slept on floors and didn't eat anything but family meal for years at a time and stuff like that. Like I did that part, but they watered the seed. And I think that that water is important because without water, we don't have life. And I think that we just have to remind ourselves of that.
It's a good reminder. Well, kind of closing on LA. LA's in a really interesting place in 2025 when it comes to dining and the restaurant scene. We've obviously got a ton of super exciting stuff happening, like May's Restaurant, but there's also a bit of a sense of doom and gloom with all the closures and the economic environment. What keeps you hopeful these days?
I think that what keeps me hopeful is that as many times as we talk about restaurants closing, we're also talking about new restaurants opening. So no one has given up yet. I mean, it's kind of we joke about it sometimes. It's like, oh man, I can't believe that person's coming here to open a restaurant or whatever it is, and it's like, but they are. And I think that if we give up, then it's gone. So I think what's motivating is the fact that this city, for the past what I've experienced 17 years, has become a really cool food city, you know, a really important food city, a city that really highly respected chefs want to come and open in, just like people wanted to in New York back in the day, in Chicago, and still to this day, and even Las Vegas and all these places. LA became one of those places. And so I put the responsibility a lot onto the guests as well. Like, you need to go out and support these restaurants. You have to, if you love a restaurant, you have to go eat there, because it just, I don't know, it shifted from like this. I remember back in the day when I first moved here, like you couldn't get into nightclubs. Like they just were not accessible unless you knew somebody. And then restaurants started having that same sort of cachet. And now it's sort of shifted to where we need every single guest that we can get walking through the door. And the restaurants like Somni in Providence, who just got 3 Michelin stars, Johnny with Cato, who is doing his thing. I think that there's still a lot of room and need for those type of restaurants too, because that's like the top. Like, this is like, we have that, but also you can go get El Pastor on the side of the road somewhere that's also going to blow your mind. And so from both ends of, there's not even, I don't want to say spectrum, because I think they're on the same they're on parallel paths. It's just the experiences are here no matter what you're looking for. And I think that the city itself doesn't have to be defined as a specific food city. I just think that we have to sustain ourselves as being a food city.
Yeah.
And I think somebody, like, you think about Jonathan Gold, like that's what he celebrated. There was no real consistency to the type of restaurant that he reviewed, but there was a consistency in the way that he reviewed a restaurant. And I felt like it was such a beautiful thing to have somebody like him that genuinely got excited to go out to eat and didn't do it from the perspective of, this is my job. He did it from, I think, the perspective of, I can tell these stories so that I can keep these restaurants going, or I can keep this city thriving, or I can contribute my part and have my legacy, which he did, you know. And I think I talked earlier in the conversation about legacy. What an incredible legacy.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny you bring up legacy, because my final question for you before we get to sort of like a final, like, fast question that I have for you. You mentioned earlier, that's what keeps you up right now, is thinking about what your legacy is going to be. What do you want your legacy to be?
That I tried as hard as I possibly could to leave an impact, not only on this industry, but on my family and on anyone that's around me. I mean, if you dig deep enough and you talk to people that genuinely know me, like know me closely, I think it's that I leave this world understood as opposed to being so misunderstood. And that's all anyone could ask for, is that you get to know me for me. And not everything that you read or see is the truth. And I think that the best way to get the truth is to ask the person to share their truth with you. And I think just being at a point in my life where I want to tell every truth that I can, because I don't know, we're collecting relationships as we travel around this planet. Part of those passport stamps are the people that you meet. And I think that getting to meet those people is such an honor. And no matter at what level or what they're doing, I just think conversations are so important. So my legacy, that I had a great conversation with him.
I love that. That's really, really, it's so powerful in its simplicity. Well, Chef, you've been so generous with us. I've got last two rapid fire questions for you. This is a question I asked Brooke Williamson, so I feel like I have to ask you too, because
All right.
you have something in common with her, that you've cooked on a lot of competition shows, and I want to know, what's the hardest competition show to cook on?
I mean, I'm sure she said the same thing, but Triple Threat is that we take that competition. I don't even call it a show. We take that competition so seriously. And it's serious because it's not just about like being so chefy and representing yourself the best way, but also it is television. So finding this ability to sort of disconnect from being that introvert that's only focused on the food, and realizing that you're also, the best way to serve your guest, who is now the viewer, is to also be entertaining. And so we stress about the cooking part 100%, but it's everything that has to do with that competition that keeps us up at night. I'm sure she told you, like, her, myself, and certainly Aisha recently for this new season, we all share the same common thing, that our eyes open up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's like that anxiety sets in, and like, it's real. Like, nobody's showing up to like styled food and everything's produced, and you're like, it's a real competition, and we're putting ourselves on the line every single time we do it. But also, again, what can we give people for watching what we do, you know? And I think that we have a responsibility, much like we have to make a dish taste delicious. We have a responsibility to give something to our guests.
That is exactly what her answer was. So you nailed that on the head. Last question for you, Chef. What are 3 LA restaurants you're loving right now?
I really love this restaurant. I love a lot of restaurants in LA, obviously. I'm going to go a little bit I like Daichan a lot, which is in Studio City. That became like a comfort food place for my wife and I for a while. And we just went there. It's just Japanese, like, it's almost like your Japanese friend invited you over to his house and his mom cooked dinner for you. Like, it's just really just good food. I think you mentioned Jordan Kahn earlier. I think for me, Meteora is something that, as far as, you know, being at the other end of fancy, every time I've been there and I've gotten to know Jordan, you know, over the years, and one would say, like, in the Red Medicine Inc. days, like, oh, we were like rivals and blah, blah, blah. It's not even the case. Jordan is a million times more talented than I am. And to be able to see him continue to do what he does, and he's the real deal. I mean, he just is. Yeah. I haven't gotten to Somni yet. I'm just going to keep answering this question because I can mention a million different restaurants. But again, Itor, those two guys alone, like, I look up to. I mean, I think what they do is like, I will look at their Instagrams for inspiration. I have no shame in saying, like, if I'm running out of ideas, those are two people's Instagrams that I can go check out and be like, oh, that's cool. Wonder if I can like work that idea into something. Those are some standouts. I just feel like any restaurant at this point is my favorite restaurant. Everyone that has stuck it out and kept this thing going, they all deserve the credit. I can't give credit to 1, 2, 3 restaurants right now. I think the resilience of this city through all the challenges that we've been in, even recently, I don't need to go through the list of hardships that we've had in this town, but the cooks show up and cook, the servers show up and serve, and the guests show up and eat, hopefully. And I think as long as we keep that going, we're all going to be okay.
Hell yeah. What a great note to end on. Everybody listening, make sure to go check out Michael's panel at LA Chef Con on October 6th. You're not going to regret it. Chef, thank you for making time for us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the LA Food Podcast. Thanks to our guests, Michael Voltaggio, Brad Metzger, for making time for us. Be sure to go check out the LA Chef Con website. I'll post it in the show notes, but seriously, it's going to be an amazing event and you're not going to want to miss it. We'll be back next week with another epic episode, but if you like what you heard today, please go to wherever you listen to podcasts, leave us a rating, review, subscribe. Seriously, all that stuff really helps. You can find me, if you're looking for me, before we drop our next episode next week on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, YouTube, and even our website at the LA Countdown. You can also find us on Instagram at It's Acquired Taste or at acquiredtaste.com. No, that's not right, at acquiredtastemedia.com. Thank you.